Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to take your business or your life to the next level. Today, I am very excited to have my guest, Lara Schaeffer, and let me tell you about Lara. She's received her Master of Education from Harvard University, and from there, she enjoyed 28 years of a teaching career, mentoring and counseling high school students. After her daughter received a late diagnosis of autism at 15 years old, Lara sought evaluation too. And her autism was formally diagnosed when she was in her late 40s. Struck by how something so important could have gone unidentified for so long, despite her repeatedly seeking out help for various challenges throughout her life, Lara began her autism advocacy work. In 2022, Lara founded her autism consultancy, Autism Discovery, where she mentors late identified autistics to help them live happy, fulfilled lives, and guides unidentified adults through informed self-evaluation for autism, which can lead them to self-diagnosis. Please join me in welcoming Lara Schaeffer.
Hi, Vicki. Hello, everyone.
All right. So we always start with the easy question. What part of the world do you call home?
I'm in New Jersey, northern New Jersey, only about 30 miles from New York City.
Oh, the
great
best of the worlds, really. You
Yeah.
go in to see the stuff in the city, go to the Met, and then...
And I lived in Manhattan for 8 years, so it is very, very nice to get back and to kind of relive those city days.
Yes. I love to go to New York. I know that my daughter, who lived there for 6 months when she was in a fashion house, she was a tremendous tour guide, and she seemed like we were having so much fun, but she missed people that she knew. New York is a little bit difficult sometimes to make friends if all you do is go to work every day. All right, so let's start with really why we're here, and that is to talk about this subject that I think needs a lot more awareness. As some of the audience may not know, I have a nephew who is autistic, and he was diagnosed very earlier than normal. And so he is actually in college right now, and he's actually did quite well in school, but he had his challenges. And so I'm so happy to have Lara here to talk about what she found and all about her advocacy work. So please share with the audience your story and the journey that took you toward the identification of your own autism.
Well, when you mentioned that I had reached out for help, that was both for my daughter and for myself. My daughter was not speaking at 18 months. At 2 years, we had her evaluated twice officially. And in fact, she qualified for state-run preschool. But nobody was telling us that she's autistic at all. And then she was in speech therapy, then she had some anxieties. And of course, when you're autistic and you are interacting with children and teachers who aren't autistic, the anxiety is a normal reaction because you are repeatedly given the message that you're doing something wrong, or that your natural reaction is not right, and things like that. So she was treated for anxiety for several months at age 7, and then I also took her in at age 12 for all of these different you know issues that we could use some help on.
Yeah.
And it took till 15 years old and another round of therapy. And by this point, this is what really gets me a little worked up. By this point, the reason we went into this therapist when she was 15 is that she, in a hard moment after a hard day, said, "Nobody likes me. I'm unlikable. I don't like myself."
Oh, wow.
And you really do get so much judgment and ignored or just looked at differently when you behave differently. But if you don't understand that, yes, my brain is a different brain, certain things are disturbing to me that other people don't mind, and my way of interacting is a little different. So those were her challenges. Mine were till age 45. When she was 15, I was 45. And when she was recognized as autistic, I pretty much knew that I am too. I raised her as a single mother. We were very close. Our interactions with the world, our reactions to the world, our need for a lot of alone time and recovery time after a lot of interaction, and just some of the ways that we think are also similar. But I got her settled first. It took 2 years for me to get my own evaluation. Actually, I wasn't going to, because I figured I know my truth now. But it became more and more the case that I knew I needed to do some advocacy. I was more and more upset and realizing how wrong it was that my daughter needed to wait till 15 years old. And that I, despite reaching out in college 3 separate times, despite seeing a social worker after college, despite having 1 year of therapy for anxiety in my 30s, that still nobody helped me.
Wow.
So I figured, in order, if I was going to be an advocate, I should get the diagnosis so that I can say I am autistic, as opposed to I think I'm autistic. So yeah, I got my own evaluation at 47.
Awesome. So I want to first recognize and applaud that you received so much. You did so much throughout your career, your life. I mean, going to Harvard, my God, the time that you had in Europe. So did this make it harder for you, for others, to accept your diagnosis? So family, friends, coworkers that think, Lara, you're intelligent, you're engaging, you look what you've done. How could you even think that you're autistic? Just share with your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I know that this is a challenge for many people. I believe on my end, when I tell people, or when people that I work with or are close with know, one of two things are true. I kind of front end with the information. I kind of say, sometimes it might not seem that I am challenged by things, but a lot of it is internalized. And a lot of people know that I am not very social, so when they work with me, they see me alone a lot, and they see me excuse myself a lot. There's that, but then I also think, honestly, that people who know me well, it makes sense to them.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So even though I did achieve a lot, and I am proud of, my accomplishments, and I can be social, those who are closest to me know and get that there is something different going on. I'm not just the run-of-the-mill successful social person. It's a different sort of
Yeah,
different sort of brain, honestly, is what it is.
and I could see, as you were saying, that a couple things. One, you became a master at suppressing how you really felt, maybe. And the second thing is people's first impression may be one that you're just standoffish or, you know, not wanting to get to know them. And until they do, as you said, become in your inner circle, then they realize that there is a reason for this, and it isn't that you are trying to be standoffish, if you will.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very open about now telling people that I'm autistic, and this and that are, part of my daily experience, and, not even necessarily apologizing, but just informing and helping people understand, because why would they
Yeah.
think, that autism is a hidden condition. So I'm very proactive with that, not only for my own interactions with people, but to educate just society at large that, the autism that we thought was autism in the 80s and 90s, there are many different presentations. And there's the masking and the kind of coping that a lot of autistics do in order to fit into society, in order to have a job that has coworkers. So most of us have done a lot to compensate and to found out our own ways to handle the situation. And then once we're out of a situation that needs us to kind of behave like others, then we can, recover, adjust, regain our equilibrium that is comfortable for us. And that's really, I think, how a lot of us manage, is an in and out of society mode. And then, now I get to have my life the way I need it. Yeah.
So I know that whenever I've heard you speak before, you talked about that diagnosis piece, and a lot of us only think of autism as being diagnosed in, around age 3. And a lot of times there isn't a distinction between male or female. In your research, and this, I guess, goes towards that education piece, talk to the audience about what you found in terms of the female and hormones and things like that, where as your daughter was at 12, 15 is starting to go through that change, and perhaps things were getting worse because of the hormones and things. So please talk to the audience about that.
Well, with the hormones specifically, I think the other end of life is really fascinating, because there are women who go undiagnosed, born in the 60s or 70s, and can handle, with kind of the strategies that I was describing, can handle things. But when menopause sets in and perimenopause and those hormonal changes, they no longer can.
Yeah.
And the coping mechanisms that they were able to use to manage no longer work. And it everything kind of either, there's burnout, there's shutdowns, meltdowns, and that actually is what exposes the autism finally at perimenopause or menopause. For at the younger age, at puberty, part of how I experienced it, and I also work with young adults with social skills, and I think the hormones might play a role, but what I'm more convinced is going on is that social situations become so much more complex.
Yeah.
Under 10 years old, the teachers navigate things. They say, make sure to include everyone, or they partner you up together. And parents arrange play dates and things, and they even give you an idea of what to do and arrange the activities. But in the middle school years and early high school, there's a lot more freedom. Students and children and teens do their own thing more. And it's no longer, let's make sure to reach out to everyone and be kind. People don't even necessarily need to be unkind for it to happen that an autistic person finds himself alone a lot. And also maybe in my several cases that I can remember as a teacher or myself, I didn't want to be part of that group. They were talking about silly things that didn't really interest me. And I need, for instance, I was a very serious student, and in between classes, I needed my brain to kind of rest and prepare for the next. And so those few minutes in between classes were precious to me to have a break. And that meant not talking to people. So, and that's, I think you mentioned earlier, so maybe she doesn't want to be friends with us. And then it self-perpetuates. I had a pretty happy adolescence, and there wasn't a lot of negativity. But there definitely was always a feeling that I was not the same, and I didn't know why.
Yeah. And I know that my nephew, who, when he was younger, it wasn't as obvious, but as he got to middle school, high school, then the bullying started, and people just weren't as accepting. And as for him, everything was black and white. He had trouble with gray. And so in sports, team sports, he wanted to play, but then he wanted to play by the rules. And anytime someone in the team was not following the rules, he thought it was his job to make sure they knew that. And so that sort of alienated him at times. And then you have social media now for those middle school, high school girls, especially, where they can be brutal if you don't fit in to what they think the ideal girl should do or say. So it makes it, I think, even tougher. And that's probably how the experience that your daughter had with people don't like me. And you start to worry, well, are they going to be thinking of suicidal and things like that?
It happens. It definitely happens. And strictness for the rules. No, you guys can't do that. My own version. And I didn't know about my autism until 45, 47. So it went into my adulthood. I wasn't very good at taking turns in conversations. I would want to say what I wanted to say, and I would be interrupting. As well, in terms of knowing how to start the conversation or how to end the conversation. So I think a lot of people, we might make others uncomfortable because we aren't naturally good at the things that society expects. And what I'm hoping is that people like who you're describing, a girl who maybe is not in the group for all these different reasons that set her apart, she's not alone. There are plenty of other girls like her who are probably trying their best to pretend to be like the others. And so with education, with destigmatization, with broader awareness, I mean, I would have loved if I knew who I was in high school and I could be vocal about it and proud about it. And I say, you guys, this is just the way my brain thinks about it. And, then I could find those others, because to me, it was everyone else against me. But there's probably a whole bunch in the middle who girls today and boys can sort of buddy up with and have their own conversations, which aren't about things that they think are silly, and instead are about things that are valuable to them.
Yeah.
So I really do think that there's going to be a greater appreciation and acceptance of people who are different, and then a greater realization that there's a pretty big group that are different.
Hmm.
Autism is fairly rare. We're still, even with increased diagnoses, um, the most recent United States statistic is 1 in 35 8-year-olds. That's still under 3%. But ADHD or Tourette's or different neurodivergences, we tend to think about the world differently, and certainly our experience of the world is different. So a lot of people find a lot of value and comfort in friendships with people who are also not the majority.
Right. And I know when we talked before, I mentioned that a lot of the things that you describe, when I talk to people about highly sensitive people, that a lot of autism aspects seem to be the same. My nephew is very sensitive to what is said and tone and different things. And I wonder sometimes if some of the folks that are diagnosed or thought of as being highly sensitive are also perhaps autistic.
Yeah, highly sensitive in the sense of taking things to heart, but also literally our senses with bright lights or sounds or
Yes.
smells. Yeah, personally, I think that highly sensitive people sort of newer category is often a bit euphemistic, and that the stigma of autism, unfortunately for many, is still great.
Yeah.
For me, I am so happy that I finally understand that, there is
Yes.
a difference in my brain that is why I experience the world differently.
Yeah.
But for others, and especially with maybe with parental pressure, or
Right.
from friend group, that might be something that people are a little bit wary or afraid of, or would rather not think applies to them.
Hmm.
Which again, once people, you and I, and interviewing me, and my speaking and being very public that I'm autistic, I think the more that people like us, because there are a lot of us out there, the
Hmm.
more that we do what we're doing, the less likely someone might want to soften a descriptor for
Yeah,
themselves and
absolutely.
avoid this autistic word.
Right. And especially it, it is a broad spectrum that you can have. There are some that I have worked with autism that were very much handicapped or disabled, if you will. But like my nephew, like you, he got straight A's in high school. He's doing well in college. He's has a job, and so I think as maybe a message to those that are employers, business owners, entrepreneurs that are looking for someone, if as you interview people, if they say their autism is a present, that it shouldn't be a stopping point. To me, I think, well, okay, now that I know this, then I know how to navigate it, and we can have a great relationship and a good working experience. But it's if you hide it, then I think there could be some issues. What are your thoughts on that? And I know
Well,
the world has to change a little bit, but
regarding some people who have autism, who are autistic, and would not, for example, go to college. Um, Between the best figures that I have found, and this is all keeping with the fact that how many people are autistic. It's
mhm,
I think among 8-year-olds, I personally think we're at the right nearing the right diagnosis state where we're finding the individuals, but those in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, there's a lot more of us than is understood. But can you just repeat the last part of your question again?
So I just wonder if somebody was an employer. Okay.
I got my thought back. Thank you.
Okay, good.
So the best
advice
distinguisher that I have come across with is fairly broad, and that is between 40 and 60% of people with autism are also intellectually disabled. So you can have autism and not be intellectually disabled, and you can have autism and be intellectually disabled. So the autism is the same. The autism is the same difficult experience. But when you have a high IQ, when you have a strong verbal ability, that's when you're better able to kind of make do and interact and most of the time, some of the time, be the way society would expect you to be, or only be slightly different. But having an intellectual disability is a completely different situation. Yes. And that person then would probably not gain entry to a university. That person often, the intellectual disability combined with the autism, sometimes people end up living in a group situation. So, and by the way, with that 3% figure for 8-year-olds who are autistic, 40 to 60% of those individuals are intellectually disabled. So even though it might be 3%, I really look at it at about half of that are people that you would run into in a school or university setting or in the professional world. So, you know, it really does kind of narrow and increase the kind of rarity. But again, people with an ADHD mind, people with Tourette's, and Tourette's is very misunderstood, and Tourette's looks very different from what people assume it looks like a lot of the time. So, you know, I estimate, I've heard estimates as high as 20%. I think it's probably more like 12 to 15% of the population have some sort of neurodiversity, but that's still a pretty distinct minority.
Right.
And autism, perhaps the most distinct of them. And I believe the one that you're going to run into less often.
Very good. So what advice would you give women to help them determine if they might be on the spectrum?
Sure. I want to encourage what is being far more accepted lately, which is self-identification or self-diagnosis. If the autistic mind that you are becoming more and more familiar with sounds like you, read as much as you can, use the internet. Certainly if a youngster is 3 years old or 8 years old, they're not going to be able to diagnose themselves. And I think that goes on into the teen years. But once someone is in their 20s or 30s, we absolutely know ourselves the best. And so the criteria that an official diagnostician is going to use was developed to help figure out if a 3 or a 5-year-old is autistic. So when you combine the fact that if you're not intellectually disabled, you know yourself, you know what the signs and characteristics of autism are, you can recognize them in yourself. In addition to all of that, if you factor in compensation and masking, we know ourselves darn better than others, and then an evaluator that we sit with for 2 or 3 hours. So, you know, it's when I actually have innovated a guided self diagnosis. So I don't have the credentials to diagnose, but I certainly have the knowledge, the expertise, the tools, and know everything that goes into a diagnosis. I just don't have that rubber stamp. But I can guide people in an efficient way through the same mechanisms that professionals use and have it be much more efficient than if they were out on their own for, months and months saying, well, maybe this and maybe that, and where should I look? We can get the job done much more efficiently. And when I ask these questionnaires, or ask various elements of the questionnaires, so many adults say, well, that used to be true, but no, that's not true. Like, I don't like socializing, but because of my job, I've gotten better at it. Or, a gentleman recently said, well, this all has to do with being a man, because when I was a kid, this would bother me, that would bother me. But as I became older and a man, people told me, suck it up and don't let it bother you. So, when you get evaluated then as a 30 or 40-year-old, the person that you are in an office for a credentialed evaluator and diagnostician, you know yourself, you know what you are doing inside. And so a woman who some of this talk and some of these characteristics seem to perhaps, it rings a bell for them in terms of their own experience in life and internal experience, and experience that maybe others don't know is that woman's experience. She can reach out to me, she can read books. If a person isn't at the place of perhaps wanting to work with someone else or work with me, you see the spelling of my name. I'm on LinkedIn. And I've got, I think at this point, 6 or 7 dozen lengthy posts. Awesome. Another content creator regarding autism is in, I have his name written down. He's in the Netherlands, and it's Tristan Lavender. So just read, and if these things ring true to you, consider. And often once people cross over and say, yeah, I'm pretty sure this is me, it just gets more and more and more reinforced. And things in the past make more and more and more sense.
So you added to your journey a new path, and the business is called Fine Tune ENG. So share with the audience the objectives of this new business and who your ideal audience would be.
Sure. So it's fine tuning. We're just spelling it with a capital ENG, and that's to emphasize the English that we are fine tuning. So this is for international professionals and students who are proficient in English. I'm not an ESL teacher, but we are taking someone who knows that not every word comes out exactly the way it should. Maybe they're asked to repeat themselves, and as a result, they're not so confident. The professional landscape is becoming more and more international all the time. And so if your home language is not English, we can fine tune that, we can polish it, and have it be an asset for your business profile, as opposed to something that's kind of holding you back. Making better connections, again, increasing your confidence, increasing the effectiveness of your message when you're speaking in English. So a real investment for international professionals that they will then have the rest of their lives and can take wherever they choose.
It's interesting. This morning I have a weekly meeting, a Toastmaster meeting I do with people in Brussels. So it's a group of multinationals, so from very many countries. And I served as the grammarian today and was correcting some folks on just what you were talking about, where they had the thoughts, but maybe the words were a little mixed up, and understanding that their minds are thinking in their natural language and they're trying to convert it into English in a matter of seconds. So definitely I will pass your name on to some of them as another resource.
And I am one trait that tends to be very strong in autistic people is fairness and justice and right and wrong. And so, a successful business person is going to have the resources to be able to work with me one-on-one. That would be the most efficient way. But it's not right to me that people in all of these different countries don't also have this opportunity just because their budget wouldn't allow it. So I am this minute, in these next 3 weeks, transforming my fine-tuning method into a way that it can be kind of do it yourself. And
Oh,
it's going to be
awesome.
a subscription plan that will be very reasonable, I hope. And in that, I mean under $5 a month, where someone can either stay with it for a couple of months and get real good. They can pop in and out. They can use it for the month before an interview or before something like that. And
Awesome.
I'm hoping that at that rate, at that affordable price, that I can really help a lot of people with this confidence, with these communication skills that and another fascinating thing about English, there could be a room full of half a dozen people all speaking English, and for none of them is it even their home language. But it's called a bridge language, because if somebody
Yes.
speaks French but not German, and then you also have someone who is speaking several other languages, at least everyone has English in common.
Yes.
So I feel extremely proud and hopeful that I'm going to really be able to improve people's lives in terms of what's available to them professionally, and in terms of their confidence and their relationships.
That's awesome. And you could charge more than $5, I'm sure.
I'm hoping volume. I'm hoping it's so reasonably priced that I have who knows how many people want to jump aboard.
That's awesome. We'll make sure that we have that in the show notes too. So
That's on its way, and it'll be available through finetuning.com. It'll be part of my website.
So I just have time for one rapid fire question, and it is, how are you helping your daughter becoming a woman that is living with autism?
Well, Socrates is the one who said, "Know thyself."
Yeah.
And when I work with people in their 20s, young 30s, who are just realizing they're autistic, a young man walked out after our second visit, and he said, last week was great, but after today, I just feel so light.
Awesome.
I feel so much happier. Because there are these burdens and judgments that through no fault of our own we carry along as autistic people. So my daughter, well before we ever knew she was autistic, know yourself. What do you need? Okay, yeah, you're not going to school today, this or that. Or I'll never forget, we hosted a graduation pool party from 8th grade, and then there was another pool party the next day, very common. She didn't go to the second one. She actually took a break from her own party and was sitting on the sidelines for about an hour, and I made sure everything was okay, and she was perfectly happy. She just was kind of taking a break.
That's right. She had that download.
And I said, well,
overload.
if you don't go to the other party tomorrow, people might take that poorly because you had your party, but you're not going to their party. And she understood that, and it was just what she needed. She truly didn't want to go after having all the excitement of her party. So self-acceptance, self-care, knowing your limits, but then doing something about it. How brave of her to say, no, it's not something that I'm up for.
Yeah.
So and now the fact that I am making changes in my life, knowing finally at 47 that I'm autistic, I can really model for her. Yeah, nope, those dishes aren't getting done tonight, but I will be ready for them in the morning.
That's right. They're not going anywhere. It's time now for us to share my screen so you can get Lara's information, because I know you're going to want to contact her. And again, I will update the slide to have the information about her offer that she has, and when that will be available. So for those of you that are just listening, I will give you her website information, and you can go to www.autism-discovery.com. That's AUTISM-discovery.com. Or you can go to www.finetune.eng, right? FINETUNENG.com, finetuning.com. She's on LinkedIn, and just go by her name, as you see on the screen, Lara Schaeffer, and that's LARASCHAEFFER. And those of you that are watching this, please go ahead and take that screenshot now. And again, I will update this slide to include that offer about the affordable way that you can do the fine tuning in that subscription service.
Or friends and neighbors and colleagues and things like that. Anyone
Yes.
you've been back home, anything. I would love to really help people, help as many people as possible.
And that's a really great point. If someone is listening to this, and maybe it isn't you, but maybe it's someone that you know, that you have in your family, a friend that would benefit from this, please share this with them. My goal is to have as many people hear Lara's words as possible. So please do me a favor and subscribe to this, but also to share this with others. Lara, it has been, as always, such a pleasure to talk with you. I definitely want to have you back in a few months so we can find out how things are going with your subscription service, talk more specifically about that, but also, just to keep in touch, to keep aware about where we are with autism and how we can help others manage their journey through life as an autistic person.
Yes, thank you. The most recent seconds have been emphasized, with my English company with fine tuning, but don't forget also on my LinkedIn profile, all the many posts about autism. See if they ring true about a sibling or a friend or yourself, and then also the guided self
Yes.
evaluation that I offer through Autism Discovery. So I'm a helper.
That's awesome.
A lot of autistics are, and we just want to help.
Awesome. Well, as always, I remind everyone that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.